Hello, and welcome to the Southcoast Artist Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The Southcoast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast brought to you by the Artist Index. And yeah, I've said it countless times, but we really do have a very special guest today. You don't know what it's taken to get this person to sit on the other side of the table of this recording because they are extremely busy. It's their vibrant personality, it's their love of the city, and the things that they have accomplished with their organization that, and I'm being genderless here, so you don't know until they introduce themselves. Guest, please introduce yourself and spell your name.
Sure. Hi, I'm Lindsay Mis, and Lindsay, last name Mis, accent over the S there. And I right now, I'm wearing this hat that's called the executive director at Massachusetts Design Art Technology Institute. But I'm also an artist and an arts advocate and a mom, among other things.
That it's bad enough being an artist, and I mean that in a good way, where I noticed that nearly everyone in town you speak with is almost like a babbling idiot when you ask them how it's going, because everybody's going 7 different ways from Sunday. Are they selling? I don't know. It really doesn't matter, does it? As long as people are enjoying what they, well, of course it matters when it comes down to pay the mortgage and the car payments, but people are really loving what they're doing. And for the first time, and I can't remember how long, they're loving the city and the South Coast overall, which didn't exist, I don't think, 15 years ago. What do you think about that?
That's about when I rolled into town. And I have seen a lot of change since being a resident here. It's one of the reasons I stay. You can kind of get addicted to, like, being an optimist. You can get addicted to when you put your energy towards something and then you watch it grow and see it turn into something else. And, going back to making a living as an artist, I feel like it's a lot of work. But I now see all of these avenues for entrepreneurship that weren't available before, but then, everybody had to have their work sold through a gallery, or, now people are doing, like Instagram drops or you name your social media. But then at the same time, there's an awareness through, where money can be funneled from, like local government or different foundations. And I think the individual artists is finally being recognized, and not just in the fine arts world, which is people's first understanding of art, paintings and sculpture. But, new media, digital paintings that you can purchase through these like new, like with your crypto or then there's also, performance art being taken serious, people collecting video art, mediums that are non-traditional and wouldn't have been seen in a museum, decades ago, are now part of the conversation when you're filling out like your grant application or something like that. So I'm in grant world at this moment because I'm hustling. But I digress.
No, I know. Grant, I've got that on my to-do list. It's like, I've got to get on it, but there's all these other things and there's only so much time. And even though I read a really super great book called 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for the Average Mortal, I think it's called. And it's not any of those books from the 80s and 90s where it's like gung-ho, blah, blah, blah. You got to do this, make a list of 6 A's and 6 B's and blah, blah, blah. None of those instructions, nothing at all. It just tells you why it is that you're not doing what you could be doing better. And a lot of it is because we're all insane. We all are killing ourselves today for what we think is going to be a better tomorrow. And there's no guarantee of that tomorrow being any better than today is.
Yeah, I have a lot of those books, but I end up reading like a lot of fiction because I'm living the application world all the time, and I need some escapism. I need to either read about some fiction or some nonfiction that's very art related, like the concept of color fields. Because when it comes down to, putting what you do on paper or trying to sell yourself and try to make a living as an artist, I think that the thing that you have to always do and that will make you stand out in every situation is just when you're true to yourself and you really feel like beholden, you just genuinely practice like your own creative beliefs. If you can just be real, that stands out no matter what. So you can, there's a million ways to skin a cat, but there's not a lot of real, especially in this kind of in this world where we've learned how to curate ourselves through like social media and websites and things. I mean, it's really important to still take that step as an artist to market. I think it's okay if you don't. I just think just focus on what you love. And if art is what you love, just do it and it will work out.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. This book is actually that kind and gentle, very zen-y kind of thing. It's like, it's insanity. And if you buy into the insanity, you're going to become insane. Let's flip over to DATMA. Give us a little history on DATMA.
Sure.
Because a lot of people still are like, what?
Yeah, it's funny to have launched and then a year after you launch, there's like this thing called the pandemic. But DATMA, so it's Massachusetts Design Art Technology Institute, and it was established in 2016 by Roger and Gail Mandel, and the founders had really built museums around the world. This was their home base, the South Coast. Not always through their career was it their home base, but this was a place that they, was their home in their hearts, and where they had an old barn that they fixed up and just kept on coming back to this place. So the New Bedford, right next to where they were living in South Dartmouth, on a little farmhouse, and there was just, they saw back in like 2013-ish, this renewed interest in incoming technology, incoming industries. And, Roger's background is in design and art. So seeing this design, art, and then with New Bedford being on the forefront of these new tech industries, that is kind of how DATMA's mission was formed. And, Roger and Gail were no longer interested in building museums in the Middle East, which is where they had moved back from. He was with he was like the forgive me with the title. It was like director of the Qatar Museum Authority. So he was like the main consultant for the prince to create a Smithsonian style series of museums in Qatar. So he went there and, he found the different architects and all that. And basically Gail and Roger just didn't want to complete their life in the desert. Gail said her famous quote, as she said to Roger, "I don't want to die in the desert. Can we please just go build museums at home?" And so he was like, "Okay, all right, I hear you." And but then all of the excitement kind of generating in their home front was happening. And I know they're just one of those couples who have ideas, and then they're extraordinary and they're also doers. And so they built this thing, and they got this great people of who have almost like a different resource strength together, and that it became their first board of trustees, and they established it in 2016. Hired me in 2018, and so I've been there since. And at first, we kind of didn't know what we were going to be, because the organization had been looking for a museum type establishment, being like the Mass MoCA of the East. But for various reasons and property, there was never a building. They tried the armory. They tried the post office. The day they went in for the tour to buy the building, it came off the market. So that was the New Bedford post office. And everything just kind of said, look, if we want to have a successful organization, we have to let the organization become itself, and then we'll figure out what sort of facilities we need. But what the city needed was accessible arts on the outside. We needed to elevate. We needed to give people more access or bridge that connection between arts and culture and the average resident who had barriers of ticket prices or museum hours, and stop that barrier of between having access to arts and culture, which is often the first thing cut in a community with low to medium income, and just get that that high caliber contemporary art on the sidewalks. And so here we are in, 2024.
6 years later, yeah.
We've done so many public art projects that we feel that's what's missing in this area. And we're conscious of the other nonprofit organizations in the area to make sure that we're not we want everybody to be able to fulfill their mission equally. And so here we are with making sure that we're trying to produce sculptures for New Bedford. So we're paying artists, commissioning them to come into the city, kind of have some sort of collaboration with schools, collaboration with local artists, and almost do like an idea share while creating this great thing that either is here for a few months, that's our summer season, or now we're really focused on at least every other year trying to do semi-permanent, like this artwork that's around for 10 years-ish. And that's what brought us into our current season, is trying to find someone who create a semi-permanent sculpture, and that's Bordalo from Lisbon.
Yeah, that which I'm thrilled about. That's pretty cool. Couple of things. Would I be wrong to say that DATMA helped legitimize, and here's where we get sticky, when we've had this conversation before, urban art, which people think of one category, it's street art. It's nothing more than that. And there was a time where I remember in the Tierney administration, before you came to town, she was one of the previous mayors, refused to. I mean, there was like this battle. It was almost like the battle of images, and they just would not legitimize wall art, urban art, graffiti, whatever you want to call it.
I would have loved to see a battle. That sounds awesome. That's when graffiti gets exciting.
Exactly.
To be honest, I wish we could take credit for that.
It's like the free wall behind the Port Farm, where they've got this drop dead gorgeous mural, and bang, 2 days later, there's another one there.
Yeah. I mean, that's that. Graffiti is a conversation, and I think that there's a wonderful mural nonprofit called Superflat. That has this incredible team of people, and they are local street artists, and then also this incredible network of people in places throughout the country. We've had several conversations with Superflat to try to coordinate, you guys do the wall art in the gallery, and we'll put the sculpture up. Kind of considering the downtown landscape as we would consider a gallery. Where do the sculptures go on the pedestal? Where should we put the big painting? And I would love to have more corners of the city where that would work out. And when that can, we should do it. But there's been a lot of I think that a lot of people have. A lot of community members, local artists, and local art advocates who have been here a lot longer than I, who have legitimized street art. And there certainly is a difference between graffiti and murals. The practices, and DATMA had a conversation with a few different artists who make work in public spaces earlier this year. But they both are exciting roads, and I'm so glad they're starting to really. I'm glad that the city demonstrates so easily the different types and categories of art in public spaces, because it shouldn't just be coordinated public art that's done on a government property and government funded and made by an artist in Texas when you're in Massachusetts or something like that. Now that, more art, the better, but let's, and federal funds should fund public art on federal land. But then also I'm glad that people are seeing the difference between a graffiti artist style, just like straight up vandalism, or a beautiful mural. There's a difference between, I think, even graffiti and vandalism. It's annoying when I see some really dumb, poorly done tag on top of like a beautiful graffiti. It's just, I think it's amateur, and but in 2 seconds it gets painted over anyways.
But it's all brought it to the forefront, because I remember asking my marketing classes, okay, so what happens when graffiti is legitimized? What happens when it's brought inside? Is it like a caged bird? Is it going to die? But wow, it's gone all over the place. And I don't know about here, but I told you in Portugal, one of the things that they're doing is their key public art people. They're now photographing, documenting the work, obviously, but they're selling prints, hand-signed prints, which is kind of a cool thing, because this whole idea of permanency is insane, because it's outdoor, to the elements. So there is no permanency.
Right.
And in Detroit, I know friends who have formed a group who are now going and trying to find all of the walls that have been painted and documenting them, because they know that eventually there's going to, the weather is going to get to them, the building's going to come down, a million ways that art is going to be gone. But this idea of authenticity and preciousness. So if it's authentic, then obviously, and you can tell an authentic piece of work. It's universally accepted.
Yeah, I think in a way you're talking about that hierarchy in graffiti. I'm not a graffiti expert, but I'm from Rochester, New York, and I remember, when I was like 16 years old, and somebody was showing me the free walls, or places that you could really like spray paint on walls in the day, and it was okay if somebody saw you. And that's where I learned where, again, those like rules of hierarchy. There's no rules, but then there's certainly people who are better, more skilled, and are allowed to assert themselves. And it's almost like a challenge, almost like a rap battle. There's a graffiti battle, and you are supposed to respond. And sometimes I can get really heated, and sometimes it can be really beautiful, and it's just like a friendship and collaborative. That's almost like your friend, your network community. Yeah. Which, so then we have this incredible artist community in New Bedford, and it's been making a huge difference in why I've stayed here, and why, I love this place so much, and I'm raising children here, and it's just like making the economy better, or, it's making some positive change, I should say. I have to be careful about that, because I know then there's also a conversation about public art causing gentrification, or but there is some network. Artists have a strong network among each other, and there's so many different. It's so versatile that there's just like room for everybody, and I think that collaborative room for everybody spirit is here in the city. And I didn't necessarily feel that so much in Rochester. I didn't feel it so much when I was working in Boston. I definitely was there when I was in Richmond, Virginia. That's a super cool artist scene. And then, but there's, you can go to these places and find it and lock into it. And I have found these communities through the arts. I don't know if you're like a lawyer, if you just like lock into the law community. I guess I lived in Charlottesville, and there was definitely a law community there, and I did not feel at home. So I don't live there anymore. It's just, I don't know. Is every interest like is lucky as the arts to have that sort of bonding that we do, and support system? I don't know.
It's really interesting, because, and that was one of the principles when we started the Artist Index, Jeff and I, was this DNA. And we're all more connected than we are separated. And we're connected because we've gone through some of the same teaching institutes. We've been instructed by the same people, or the people that instructed us were instructed by others. I mean, it's really I keep going back to, I think, the 70s, where somebody did like a genealogical chart, more with cartoonish, of all of the rock bands at the time, where, okay, before they were Led Zeppelin, they were this, but this guy played with this band and this guy played with that band. So it's all this intermingling and heterogeneous is better than homogeneous. And that's what makes it so cool. Now we have the Mesoamerican and South American influence coming into the city, which is over the top. I mean, the food, the music, all that other stuff. And it's too bad that it was here in a way and it wasn't here in a way when my mother's family came over. My mother was born in Yonkers, but her parents came over from the Portuguese mainland. And they created their own little community because they weren't really accepted. The Portuguese thing. Every culture has to go through that vetting process, because the established demographic resents those people coming in. But then eventually it all gets blended in together, and I think that's what is making New Bedford so. I know it's an old,
or has made New Bedford.
Yeah.
It's like the common thread over the decades.
A very old-fashioned term. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the worst kept secret kind of thing.
Well, we've had news crews here over the past 2-3 months now, pretty regularly, presenting. I think the last one was Hatch Street Studios. They just had a crew. It might have been from Chronicle, Channel 5 in Boston.
Yep. That's cool.
Word is getting out there. I know that not because it was an intended effort, but because of my wife's birthplace was Detroit, and I got to know the artist community there. I'm represented by a gallery there. The vibrancy of that community, the challenges that they have, cross-pollination. I guess that's the word that's been bouncing around in the back of my head, is this cross-pollination, because everybody is from somewhere. And everybody can bring something to the forefront. And artists don't like staying in a rut. They like, oh, look what Lindsay's doing. I think we could try that too. And it's not competitive. It's the old gas station formula in marketing. One gas station on an intersection does okay. A second gas station opens up. There's no need to panic because they'll both do very well. A third gas station comes in and they're doing moderately well. Again, it's because it's convenience more than any end price. A fourth gas station comes in, and that's it. That fourth location is never going to make it because it's saturated. It's hit its tipping point. And I don't think we've hit our tipping point here. I mean, I've spoken to the mayor and I told him he is going to be on this podcast. And he's like, well, why do you want me on the podcast? I said, because you are art adjacent. You are an art industry. You're a supporter. A lot of what's happening, and it's not even getting political.
In 2023,
what's
Mitchell
speak?
Was the only mayor to receive.
Was it from the state of Massachusetts?
No,
right?
it's federal award for
right.
like the mayor that incorporates the arts or something. I should know because I was one of the two people who wrote a letter of rec, but it's like I barely remember what happened last week, let alone last
Would you have
February.
A dinner last night?
Yeah. But yeah, it's being in a position when you present public art. I produce public art, and so public art, I'm always working with the city because it's public property. So I do get to talk with the mayor's office quite a bit, and I have to say I get a lot of support from the city team, the Department of Public Infrastructure, several of the team members. We have each other's cell phone numbers, and I bake for them. And because I know if you're living in New Bedford, you're not getting paid as much as name your city, So, I rely on the city and I rely on the mayor to believe in what we do. And yeah, we're kind of like the art budget that the city wishes that they had. I don't know. Well, I should say wishes that they had, that they just don't have. And being a nonprofit on our own, we can do our own thing, like fulfill our own mission. You know, we want to have something that overlaps with design, art, and technology in some way, or people on the forefront of their medium, or using materials in a 21st century way. You know, it's not, I would say, you know, speaking of Bordalo coming up, there weren't a lot of people making sculptures out of plastic Tide containers and helmets. You know, that is what a palette of color is for him. Of course, you know, 50 years ago, we didn't have the sort of waste problems that we have today. Mm-hmm. But, you know, he's taking a problem and doing something new with it. So that, but yeah, the city is, we wouldn't be able to do anything without the city. I mean, Christina Connolly, who is the mayor's chief operating goddess. Mm-hmm. She's the first person that I report to when we kind of like put a stamp on a certain direction. And when we're going to hire somebody, we're like, hey, this is what we're doing, or this is what we're thinking. Can we get away with this? How can we align with the city's mission and, or the city's,
vision?
The vision of the city. So, you know, there are lots of people who have spent decades and decades investing into what that vision is. And there's like,
and Christina being one of them.
Yeah. So there's like the rapid recovery plan, where when you can try to strengthen the main street in the downtown, then that will trickle into the pathways and bridges into the neighborhoods. And so if I want to do what I'm doing and also like pool my resources with theirs, and in turn having this like really great positive effect for the city, then yeah, I put my stuff where the rapid recovery plan says that we need a sculpture, especially if there's an empty plinth there waiting for me. You know, it's crazy how much I've learned about city infrastructure and how flexible it is, and how to work around what I, as a pedestrian, forever thought was like, that's permanent. You know, that bench is bolted into the sidewalk, or that is a, 10,000 pound cement flower pot. It's just like, it's not a big deal, Mish. You know, if you want us to move that and put a sculpture there, like, just let us know. We'll figure it out. It's like, really?
Yeah, that was not the case 20 years ago.
Thank you, Anne Laurel, for telling me that was flexible. Like, there's so many people who want to help and make it work. And like, that's the beauty of a city like New Bedford with 101,000 people in it. Like you can't do that. You can't have that sort of care and involvement in bigger cities. So it's like a perfect, this place is like a nice, just right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially
not too
for
hot, not too cold,
like,
just right.
We lean on, like Department of Public Infrastructure, DPI, to help us with installs. That's a huge significant cost saving measure, but also like being really smart on our end, because we're not like a factory pumping out a sculpture on a plinth every year. Sometimes it's going to be there for 3 months. Sometimes it's going to be there for 10 years. So it's like more responsible to work this way, and partner and get the community involved and get them to care. I mean, I get a lot of a fun, positive, hard time from what we ask DPI to do. Mm-hmm. They're the first to crack a joke about how nuts I am, and why I'm even envisioning to do what I want to do with putting art in public spaces. But, at the end of the day, they're like, we wouldn't do this if we didn't totally trust you and love what DATMA's doing.
And then they tell all their friends, look at the project I help work on.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, and that's the other thing. It's the investment. There's been a change of attitude, which has changed our trajectory, which has been so important. Now, what are some of the major installations that DATMA has completed?
Sure. I mean, most memorably, if you remembered to go around the corner from Union Street back in 2019, we had this incredible artist, Patrick Shern of Poetic Kinetics. And I describe it as a silver blanket over Custom House Square. So I think turning one parking lot into a green space is awesome. And that's our main stage for projects. I mean, we right now we have a giant 17-foot tall door by New York City sculptor Mark Riegelman. We've had a lot of programming there in general. So let's see. I try to stick to walkable locations and, make sure that there's that sweet spot with curating projects that are seen by residents, but also tourists, because we're trying to recreate the place you live. So, but also attract people to go up the hill and spend some money at Green Bean or Poor Farm Tavern or in Calico. We did the New Bedford Fairhaven Bridge.
Yes.
We have an incredible 280 foot long dimensional mural. What does that mean? It's like a mural then with added panels, and that was an important project for us because we got to make that with the artist was Sylvia Lopez Chavez. She's Dominican and she's located in Boston, but because of being in Boston in the summer months, in the spring she had driven down to have really great engagement with New Bedford high school students. And that was from the art classes, from the engineering classes, and from the technology classes with Dr. Ho. And it was, our attempt to try to have all of those kids work together and on one thing. And there was a lot of people involved, but ultimately we figured out this great way to have the kids design these panels with patterns from their photography that they had taken around, their daily life. And they got to work with this renowned, internationally acclaimed artist, Sylvia Lopez Chavez, who was cool. I wanted to hang out with her. And it just showed kids how you can get involved and be part of your community and do something that is seen in the everyday. We took these kids seriously. So that was a super important project because it's also still there. That's going to be there for another 10 years.
Yep.
And it's at a major intersection of the city. It's at an entryway into the city. So you kind of get this sense of place when you're driving into the city and you're oh, this is a story of what this place is about. Right. I mean, as long as you're not going 55.
A visual gateway. It's weird because you can get this very drab room and get a really nice potted plant. I know it sounds silly, a silly analogy. And you put that potted plant in this very drab room, and then all of a sudden things start to we could get this kind of drape or shade. Oh, and this kind of chair. All of a sudden, it just starts to come together where before it was just blah.
The city for me is just an outdoor gallery. I am constantly taking notes as to who owns what building. And then finding out, oh, cool, that person because you grew up with them. All right, so do you think that you could maybe see if they would be cool if I could put something on there? Or, if it's, a lot of times I pay attention to if it's a historic site because we always have a little of an extra challenge on a historic building. But there's often buildings that are historic but maybe aren't listed. So I can kind of have the beauty of both worlds where I can get away with stuff. But anyways, I have a little directory of sites that I'm trying to explore. And, the city's movement, it's changing. There's we have this train that's coming. It's going to come one day.
All my life I've been waiting.
I know, the train. And now I'm saying it, the train is coming. Yeah. And, so we'll, just yesterday, my program committee, and that's how the artwork is selected. We discuss artists, and it's talk about there's some great conversations, some heated conversations, but DATMA's artwork is reviewed by a group of people, not all just board members, people from the community that we consider our muses, our inspiration, our allies. And we were talking yesterday, we need to start planning how we can have stuff over by the new train. What's going to happen on the bridge? What's happening over by the future entryway? Let's talk about Pulaski Park. How can we start to do stuff there? And it's good job, because it's not, the traffic isn't there yet, but we're starting to, again, of course, with guidance from city planning, where else should we be directing our projects that will, for us, we're too small to leave the downtown area. Otherwise people really don't know what DATMA is. I do everything that we do. We're a nonprofit. I have to get that funding. So I have to somehow I lean on downtown for a lot of reasons, but also I don't think the work is done downtown at all. Especially with public art. I want to have I want to have the thing covered with public art. I want people to be able to just walk up to like all of the little merchants, small businesses, and kind of use the public art as wayfinding. I just wanted to be surrounded because there's so many artists around this area. And I have to say and we could talk about this next subject for like years, without the CVPA Star Store being in the heart of downtown, like that was, besides Gallery X, the free place where you could always count on there being a really good lecture, a really great 1 or 2 gallery shows, maybe 3, bathrooms. I mean, it was such a resource. And that was right, the major intersection of Purchase and Union. And like, again, with that whole, not everybody can afford a ticket. We need to make sure that the spirit of this artist community is clear as day. I wanted to, what is it like? You can't make it good, make it big, make it red. Like, I just want as much of it as possible. And I just want to like plaster this place. So I'm just going to keep doing that. We have, let's see. So we did, some of the longer term projects, it's our goal to start making these longer term projects, but also keep doing the short temporary projects, which is cool because there's a lot of mediums that don't last more than 3 months. Textiles, glitter, I don't know. But projections, lighting projections, that's not even a physical thing. Yep. Which is, we've done that. But did you know that if you do lighting in the summer, you have to wait until it gets dark? Yeah, it gets dark really late. Really late. Yeah, well, we did that project in 2020. It was cool because we were projecting new contemporary art during the pandemic when most of the museums around the world were closed. And, you could go down to downtown New Bedford at 8:30 and watch and listen to this beautiful visual soundscape about the fishing industry, about vessels, the ships. And it was an homage to the fishing community, which has been the lifeblood of the city since it began. And, but, you could go down and see that show. It was a 20-minute show that just kept on looping from 8:30 until midnight. And it was like free for like 3 months, all summer long. And then in addition, we had installed Susani Park, who is a Korean sculptor who works at Dartmouth College. And so it was cool because I was like, oh my God, cool. Like you can drive down here during the pandemic and, you're in your mask, we're in our Tyvek suits and we're like getting her artwork out of her storage area. And it was really hot to wear the Tyvek suit in May. But that was where we were mentally. We didn't understand how to do it any other way. So we're Tyvek'd up, but it was like, wow, this is the benefit of working with artists in driving distance. If there's a pandemic, you can still go and get it and then present it in the Star Store windows like it's like a floor to ceiling storefront. Just look at it and enjoy it. So we were really determined at that time to make it so then you can present artwork and get out of your house and get away from your TV screen and feel like you could look at art in a safe place. So that was a pretty, and that year, which was our second year, we had like summer winds with Poetic Kinetics and it like was the coolest thing ever. And then, the day that we had a big party and announced what we were doing, the day afterwards, the whole like country closed down. So it was like, okay, well, how can we still make this work? It's our second year. And at the time we were still pretty seriously looking for a building, but I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now about DATMA anyways, if we had a building at that time, because we wouldn't have been able to make ends meet by not having a building. We always pool our resources to staffing and then commissioning artists. And then, we commission like Medium Studios. They're like the best designers that we've ever worked with. And they're right here in New Bedford. And, so we're always just trying to make sure that we're being as slim as possible, and then are realizing that the whole building thing was a problem, was a barrier, like just kind of confirmed things at that time.
You didn't have to be conventional. Basically, you didn't have to have that conventional footprint and all these other things. Before I forget, you've been importing artists. Have we been exporting any of our artists?
Let's see. Kind of working on that right now. I think are you purposely leading me to this conversation about Lisbon?
Well, I mean,
I know we've had side combos.
We've discussed that. I mean, but again, we have these artists coming from, across the Atlantic and from other locations in the United States. But I'm wondering if any of our art, well, I mean, Keith Francis, for example, in a way kind of qualifies for an example of this question. His artwork was, a piece of his artwork was seen by an international curator in Italy. And they contacted him to send his work for this exhibit. And here he is with, Andy Warhol and Picasso and Banksy and all these other people. So you're reading all these names and like, Keith Francis, who the hell's that? But
it is happening here in New Bedford.
Yeah, and it's going, so we have this expansion and contraction. We have artwork coming in, and we have our artists exporting their work. We've been talking about it since I came back from Portugal. We've got this opportunity for this 90 meter, that's 270 foot ceramic mural ready to go, ready to plaster onto a wall somewhere. That is an homage to the fishing folks from an artist that's related to Figueira da Foz, which is where a majority of the Portuguese fishermen in our fleet come from. There's this, we're sister cities. This is incredible connection. So it doesn't stop. And that's one point I wanted to make. And the other one was,
well, to answer your question,
right?
In 2020 March, I was supposed to go to Lisbon to with my founder Roger Mandel to work with Museum of Art, Architecture, and Technology to start to create some sort of exchange where we kind of like shared artist Rolodexes, but then also supported their artists. I mean, it's kind of happening in Fall River right now with the Fabric Fest. There's an awesome exchange happening there. More where we have the Portuguese artists come to the United States. But I mean, with working with Bordalo this year, and sorry, he's on the front of my mind for obvious reasons. When speaking with the Portuguese consulate, I mean, when we went in, and the main topic was how can we get that sort of exchange to happen? How can they be involved? What can we do? And so it's one that we are trying to kind of get going again, when it was something that we were really asserting ourselves and doing pre-pandemic. And then as far as representing local artists or having our artists connect with the artists that we're working with, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Sylvia Lopez Chavez is now a member of Superflat. And as we had the Superflat team helping us install that. And there's, Brian Tillett, a local graffiti artist there, there's an incredible
so there's no
relationships. And then even with our first artist, Patrick Shern of Poetic Kinetics, I mean, it was really cool to connect their team with some of the people that we were working with, like Don Burton, who produced our first season overview, which is just like a short video clip kind of about what we do. Because with public art, the problem is it's like here and now, but then it's gone in 3 months often. So we have to do our best to archive it. And then Don's working with Poetic Kinetics, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is extraordinary. Like Don is so good. And he was working in LA for quite a bit too. So exactly, he kind of understood what they were going for as well. But there was a lot of intent at least to work together and have him be part of a resource for PK. So the point is to try to make that magic happen. But at the same time, I think that in the next few years, DATMA will have figured out the path that's right for us to try to be really intentional about that. And I mean, it's like me and one other person that actually works at DATMA. So we have to make sure that what we do well, and make sure that we can handle that before we bring in the next ball to juggle. And because my founder, Roger Mandel, had passed away. So that helped to have us change our priorities. Like we really wanted to lock in on making sure that we fulfilled his wishes for DATMA, which is to get be more intentional with incorporating youth and having DATMA serve as an educational resource to people who are at this age where it could influence them, and maybe also help fulfill a resource that's not happening in schools, because art is the first thing that is cut. And art in schools is not the way that it was, back in the day. Even when I was in school, it's like a small percentage of that. So we had prioritized creating an intentional education sector for DATMA. We have like DATMA in the classroom and DATMA design days, and then public programming. And those are, I'm being a little cash about it, but like those are real things. Like right now, 11th graders at New Bedford Votech are building the interior structure for Bordallo, and they met with Bordallo and his team, and like it's a professional opportunity for them. Also, this like incredible community act. But they, Bordallo's like, come to my studio. Like I invite you guys, and you're in Lisbon, like come and work for me. Like it's exciting for them to be taken seriously at 17, 16 years old, and then to see that they're making a difference and that we trust them and rely on them. And that is happening because of design, art, and technology incorporated into a program where, they're welding, they're becoming industry professionals, but we're asking them to think a little bit outside the box, and then teaching them how you can play a role in this without being an artist. You can be part of the local government. You can be part of you can be a studio manager. Like they're just having this window into this experience of what does it look like if I want to be an artist professional. So that's like DATMA in the classroom. And then, so we work with a lot of other New Bedford schools. So I could go down the list, but then, making sure that we're present with accessible, maybe first-time art experiences during public events downtown. So that AHA night, art history architecture night in New Bedford, which is the second Thursday of every month, which is a really important happening in downtown. If DATMA is running a program, we are out there with our aprons on and trying to put knives and scissors into children's hands, teaching them engineering and design skills. And then, there's like general programming, like a nice boring lecture that you and I would like geek over. But so there's just these like things that we try to really be intentional about and do well. So that in honor of Roger and his mission of arts and education being in alignment, STEAM education and what have you, that kind of budged when we were trying to really focus on like artist exchanges and residencies, which I was doing with Roger before he passed.
I mean, collaboration is key. A lot of people don't realize. They think that, first of all, that artists are highly individualistic. I mean, yes, they are. There's no one way or another, but there's an enormous amount of collaboration just in film arts. I mean, it's amazing. When you're working in film arts, you don't soil the sheets, you don't burn the bridge, because you're eventually going to have to double back, because everybody knows everybody. So if you diss one person or if you rob one person, word gets out and you're nothing. You're dead to me. That kind of thing.
It's a pretty small world.
It is a very small. It's a small world that has tentacles that go out far-reaching, like L.A. We've got between Adam Katz and Don Burton, just those two guys, and there are others that have connections to LA in the film industry, and people think we're not this isolated little fishing village anymore. This incredible excitement, and one of the points that I wanted to make is, whether we realize it or not, there is some young person who is going to be, if they haven't already been, affected by looking at a piece of sculpture that DATMA brought in. It's sitting on a plinth, and it's going to get stuck in their mind like a burr, like a good burr. And 20 years from now, they're going to be being interviewed. And so what got you on this path to art? Well, I was living in this, fishing port. It was the number one fishing port. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then one day we went to Glaskey Park, and I saw this piece of sculpture, and I went, I can see my entire life in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, majority of my art experiences growing up was not in a museum because it costs money to get into a museum. But I certainly went to a lot of outsides of museums and saw my grandfather's paintings in like places like banks where I could go in and just look at them, or see sculptures where my grandfather maybe was doing a music performance outside. So it was outside, and thankfully had access to that, and my parents had us go and do those things. But it was certainly only because it was near us and around us. I'm from New York. I'm from New York State, and I didn't even go to New York City to go to my first gallery until I was in college, and it was a field trip. It's like, why? Well, because it takes 7 hours to get to New York, and you're like gonna then have to spend money. It's like,
exactly.
So it was just always that was what I mean. I'm very privileged in general, but we've had a lot of ways that we had to save money to make sure that we were privileged.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much more to talk about, Lindsay. So much more. The world is, it's the oyster. It's the old oyster thing. I mean, there's just so much going on here. What Jeff and I have been doing with the Artist Index, we just only scratched the surface. And sometimes I get really antsy because it's not enough. I'm not where I want to be, and so on and so forth. But when we look back, when we started and what was going on in the city and what was around to support us, it's like night and day. And I've seen the bubbles in New Bedford. I've been here long enough to see the bubbles. And the bubbles are, this is going to be the next best thing. They have the silver bullet mentality. This is it. And they soon discovered it's not this thing. It's not that thing. It's this thing, that thing, and another thing, because it's all got to work together. It's not a get rich quick sort of scheme. And I don't know what's happened. I don't, there's always a genesis to everything. I think the pandemic, as horrible as it may seem, it claimed millions of lives, but it also brought introspection. It brought it brought an awakening with it as well. And I don't think we've seen the end of the positive effects of it. I know my sister-in-law comes from Detroit. I mean, the number one museum in the United States is the DIA. And she's a sophisticated lady. And she's like, if the Whaley Museum ever decides that they want to have like townhouses or apartments and in a restaurant, I will never leave this area. I'll be stuck here. And she's like absolutely mesmerized by the vitality of the city. There's just so much to offer. And I think with the railroad coming in, there's that danger of gentrification. And you know what? The doomsday people, we have them to thank for making us aware that it is a possibility. It has happened in so many places. It's almost like a game plan. Artists come into a depressed area because that's all they can afford. They get the place up and going with little boutiques and coffee shops and smoothie places and such. And then the developers come in and start buying these buildings out, and they start rehabbing them into hoity-toity neighborhoods. And that's the end of it. But at the same time, we've got people coming in from away, so to speak. We've got that train. We've got that pipeline of people with deeper pockets, more resources and more privilege coming down here, who are going to be wondering, why the hell didn't we ever come down here before?
Well, I mean, I'm here because something else brought me here. I mean, I was just talking the other day with someone about like, wow, our whole friend group here owns houses and like friends going to, tight with the local restaurant owners, all that. We came here because we were students at UMass and we moved to downtown New Bedford. I want to make sure that we still have this resource of creatives wanting to come here. And I think, I'm excited that, the New Bedford is looking appealing for those creatives. So it's happening now. We met some really cool people not from here, or really cool people who were from here and are back. And they are muses and thinking differently. And I love that mix. And being, I think the moral of our conversation here today, you can be, when you're an artist, you can basically be anything. And it's pretty incredible. And whether I know like Alyssa from Calico, like she has an art degree, but here she is having a boutique and she's a retail business owner. Same with Anthe Princiatis at the Drawing Room.
Right.
Same, she went to RISD, and it's like the arts are bringing in these incredible people and continuing to, add richness to the soul of this place. So we can thank the arts for everything that is awesome about this place.
Mm-hmm. And more to come. And there's more to come. So, folks, you've been listening to Lindsay Mis from DATMA, and I'm your podcast host, Ron Fortier. And we're going to wrap this up, but I definitely want to put Lindsay on the spot and say we're going to do a second one, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, we have to do a second one. There's not.
Thank you.
We can't compartmentalize
Can't wait.
this. No, okay.
The Art Index is important work. I'm happy to keep the conversation going.
Thank you so much. And with that in mind, folks, thanks so much for joining us. See you next time. And remember, get out there, be situationally aware, and be kind to each other. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the Southcoast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the Southcoast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.